Sir Arthur Conan Doyle put these words into Sherlock Holmes's mouth. Education never ends, Watson. It's a series of lessons with the greatest for the last. Learning isn't something we only do in school. The most astute leaders among us understand that learning is something that happens every day. Well, at least to those of us who have open and curious minds. To develop as leaders and people, we need to be active, lifelong learners. Learning is the final topic in the series of 4 core leadership skills that we've been covering here in separate episodes. In case you missed it, or maybe you've been following along, but you just want the 4th in the collection, the first 3 were self-awareness, communication, and influence. As you've probably guessed from the sources I quote and the connections I make to past leaders, I'm a big fan of learning. At the end of every issue of my newsletter and at the end of every episode of this show, you'll hear the same phrase. There's so much to learn. And there is. One of the things I've found that goes hand in hand with learning is teaching. If you, as a leader, are curious enough to learn, I'll bet you're also eager to teach and help others become better versions of themselves. I know I am. That's why I've committed myself to helping executives and their teams improve their leadership presence and continue their leadership learning experiences. I hope you're curious and excited about learning more with me today about making you a lifelong learner in this final episode of Season 4 of Timeless Leadership. This is Timeless Leadership, where we explore the values and principles that drive extraordinary leaders. We look for the timeless virtues that are just as relevant in the 21st century as they were in the first century. Universal truths that will help make us better versions of ourselves. Hi, I'm Scott Monty, and welcome to Timeless Leadership. As an executive coach, business advisor, and public speaker, I work with leaders at all stages of their journeys. And the one thing I look for in each of them is whether or not they're committed to learning. Because without self-awareness and learning, there's no development, either personal or professional. I hope you'll take a moment to help other people learn too by giving us a rating or a review on Apple Podcasts. Your opinion matters, and I hope other people get the benefit of your willingness to learn and teach. You can also check us out on Good Pods, where Timeless Leadership has been named a top 50 podcast in the management category. As I said, this marks the final episode in Season 4. I'll be taking the rest of the summer off, but when I return, it'll be with a whole new stable of guests and a few changes here and there to the format. But I hope you'll stick around. Meanwhile, you can still hear from me every week through the Timeless and Timely newsletter, where I offer stories for curious lifelong learners like you who are looking for answers to today's challenges. And believe it or not, leaders from the past experienced similar challenges themselves. Lots of uncertainty. I tell their stories and I put them in context for you each week so you can speed up your leadership journey by learning from their failures and successes. So be sure to sign up at scottmonty.com. If you're going to be a leader, you need to be in a mode of constant learning and valuing and seeking out experiences that fuel your development. And in this, you need to recognize when new behaviors and skills and attitudes are required and accepting the responsibility for developing them. Lifelong learning is critical if you want career longevity, and it involves learning from mistakes, asking good questions, and being open to feedback. For senior leaders, learning is also about teaching, inspiring others to learn, and creating a culture of learning throughout your organization. If you're a skilled and agile learner, you'll be willing to learn from experience and you'll apply those lessons to perform successfully in new and challenging situations. As a lifelong learner, you learn new information quickly. You figure out how to interact effectively with others. You come up with resourceful solutions, maybe in circumstances where others have struggled to succeed. You understand what's needed to succeed at one level or in one setting doesn't necessarily translate to the next. And you know that your current skill set isn't as important as your ability to learn new knowledge, new skills, new behaviors that'll prepare you to respond to future challenges as a leader. I'm going to go over some of the characteristics and skills of lifelong learners, and then we're going to cover 5 facets that researchers have identified in lifelong learners. And then finally, I'm going to leave you with 4 tips on how to become a better learner. So let's jump in. So, skills and characteristics of leaders who are committed to lifelong learning. Number 1, they're often looked up to. They're admired, even relied upon as innovators. They're willing and eager to challenge the status quo. Number 2, they have high levels of intellectual curiosity. They push, explore, ask questions, seek knowledge and insight. Thomas Hobbes once said that curiosity is the lust of the mind. And Lawrence Stern in 1760 said the desire of knowledge, like the thirst of riches, increases ever with the acquisition of it. That's what curiosity will do to you. Number 3, they're energized by challenges. They don't get overwhelmed. Instead, they stay calm and they get focused and work through obstacles. Number 4, the lifelong learner is resourceful. If one approach doesn't work, they try another. Number 5, they're great at jumping into action, performing and executing, but they also know when to step back. Number 6, they draw on past experiences and they intuitively make connections from previous lessons. Number 7, they prefer to live on the edge and seek out new experiences, and they undertake diverse challenges. Number 8, they're not foolhardy. They're self-aware enough to see limitations, but they aren't daunted when they don't know the answers. And number 9, they're works in progress. They're restless, self-critical, always striving, compelled to keep challenging themselves and learning. Now, as you may have guessed, lifelong learning is more of a way of life than it is a specific skill. People who rate high in lifelong learning are most likely to have a long career track. They're considered the rock stars in their company or field. They outperform their peers, and they get promoted more frequently. Over time, if you're committed to learning, leaders and organizations will recognize you as having the right stuff and being of high potential. So, what does it take to become a lifelong learner? How do you gauge your level of agility and the likelihood that you'll have a long career? As I said, researchers have identified 5 facets of lifelong learners. They are how you innovate, how you perform, how you reflect, how you take risks, and how you defend. So let's consider each, and I'm going to ask you some questions. So you might want to grab a pen and a piece of paper and jot down your answers to some of these questions with each one of the 5 areas. Number 1, innovating. Ask yourself, do I, A, challenge the status quo in an attempt to make improvements, experiment with new ideas, and endeavor to find the best solution to each individual problem? Or B, do I try to achieve the best with what I have at my disposal, choose the most readily available solution, and move on to the next challenge? All right, so write that down, A or B. And if you need to rewind, you go right ahead, but I'll move on to the next one. Performing. Ask yourself, do I A, pick up on subtle cues to build a better understanding of the problem, stay calm when faced with a challenge or stressful situation? Or do I, B, trust my intuition to guide me to a solution? Use stress as energy to get things done more quickly. A or B? Okay, on to reflecting. Ask yourself, do I, A, make time to critically reflect on my experiences, examine past failures for lessons? Or B, do I move quickly from one task to another in order to accomplish more? Put failure quickly behind me in order to focus on the very next challenge? A or B? Risk-taking. Again, asking yourself, do I, A, volunteer for roles that are ambiguous, new, or otherwise challenging? Take enjoyment from struggling with a challenging problem? Or B, do I take on challenges where I know I can be successful? Do I take enjoyment from managing a well-oiled machine? A or B? And finally, defending. Ask yourself, do I, A, consider my personal role in both successes and failures? Do I seek feedback because I need it? Or B, do I take credit for success and quickly make excuses for failure? Do I listen to feedback because others want to give it? I want you to tally up all of the A's and B's in your responses. There should be 5 responses total. And it's okay to have a mix of both. If you have more B's than A's, though, you may have some work to do to be a committed, lifelong learner. But the good news is I have 4 tips to help you become a better learner. And here they are. 1, be a seeker. Go and seek out new and diverse experiences. It's only memorable when you can impact the way that you lead and manage. So seek out different experiences. Immerse yourself in situations that broaden your skills and perspectives. Explore new pathways. Right? Embrace the challenge of something unfamiliar. Don't just go through the motions. If you react to a new learning opportunity by staying in your comfort zone, well, then you're going to minimize struggle and discomfort. And that means you're going to miss out on the corresponding growth and performance. So ultimately, you'll end up being the same as you were before. So the power of having this new experience is lost. So think about the unfamiliar. It's uncomfortable, but the unfamiliar is important. Take on a new challenge that scares you. Right? Find something that's meaningful, but not so important that if you fail at it, it'll have serious personal consequences. But if you're going to do this, tell somebody what you're doing and ask for their help and support along the way. And you'll be able to develop new skills and perspectives that may become an important part of your repertoire in the future. Don't get stuck on the first solution that comes to mind. It's often easy to simply default to that, but by trying out new approaches, well, you can uncover new ways. And those could save you time and energy down the road. Bring in other points of view. Find another way to understand the problem. Approach it from a different angle. For each problem that you face, challenge yourself to come up with new solutions, even if tried and true ones exist. And finally, under this category of being a seeker, make it a habit to push for new ideas. The less traditional, the better. And when you're faced with challenges, ask yourself 2 questions. 1, what's holding me back from trying something new and different? And 2, if these constraints weren't in place, how would I approach this situation differently? Second tip I have for you is hone your sense-making. You know, there's a lot of uncertainty, a lot of complexity, ambiguity, speed in the current environment, and you don't always have the luxury of time. People expect you as a leader to be decisive. It means you need to take an active approach to making sense of things when you are faced with a challenge. Ask why and how and why not. Really actively listen to understand what other people are saying. And trust that you'll have a response when they finish talking. Don't be like my teenage sons who listen only for the chance to start talking. They tend to not listen to understand. They just wait for the gap for when it's time for them to start. When you find yourself feeling stressed, pause. Don't just blurt out the first thing that comes to your head. Consider what's really required. And people will respect you for this if you take a moment. And find another way to understand a problem. Think about different senses, different techniques to tap into your emotions and gain understanding and insight. That's sense-making. The third tip is internalizing your experiences and your lessons learned. Now, this is important because you need to solidify your insights and things that you've learned along the way because you need to recall them to apply them later. And if you don't process what you've learned, you may miss important clues to next steps. And you can lean on other people to help you with this. Learning agile people recognize that other people are essential to their learning and performance. And they build ties and relationships that help increase their access to people who can provide them with new experiences and opportunities to learn and ultimately to understand how they're doing. So you want to ask for feedback and be open to criticism. This is key. Find somebody that you trust and ask them to give you some feedback. Maybe ask some clarifying questions and think about what happened and what you're learning and view that feedback as a gift. It's a gift that someone's giving you. You might not like it. That might be uncomfortable, but there's value there. There's always an opportunity to learn something about yourself. Second, don't defend. We get awfully defensive when we hear feedback about ourselves, especially when it's feedback that we don't like. And you tend to enter a self-preservation mode, and you close yourself off to what could be. One of the phrases I have tried to eliminate from my kids' vocabulary is, "I was just." When I ask them for an explanation about something, or when I ask them to tell me why they haven't done a certain thing. "Oh, I was just. I was just." Well, you're trying to justify, you're trying to excuse behavior that has you in the doghouse. So, eliminate "I was just" from your vocabulary and consider the feedback that you're getting so you can see patterns and changes in yourself over time. And finally, you want to reflect, alone and with others. Learning occurs when you take the time to think about what happened and shift your thinking beyond what happened and ask why things happened the way they did. There's a quick 30-second habit that I have tried to instill into people that I coach and even my own kids. Immediately, I tell them, immediately after every lecture or meeting or significant experience, take 30 seconds to write down the most important points, the takeaways. If you always do this, and even if you only do this with no other revision, you'll be okay. But you have to do it. You have to do it right after you've had an experience. Otherwise, you'll lose the lesson along the way. It gets easier over time the more you practice it. The fourth and final tip here is adapt and apply. Rely on your intuition. Concentrate on principles and rules of thumb. People who rate high on being lifelong learners, they're operating mostly on feel and flexibility. And when faced with something new, you look for similarities between your new situation and the things you've done or experienced in the past. And you draw on these similarities to frame your new challenges. This is exactly what I do in Timeless and Timely, using experiences from past leaders, even though they're not the same experiences, there are similar situations and similar outcomes that we look for and we can apply today. And don't overthink it. You probably feel a lot of pressure to get things done quickly. And when you stress your brain, when you consciously search for ideas and solutions, well, you end up missing out on the wisdom of others or even the wisdom of your own experience. Relax. Take a walk. Take a 5 or 10 minute break. Inspiration often comes from your unconscious, and being open to this can spark new ideas and strengthen your performance. So ultimately, your ability to learn and adapt will determine the extent to which you thrive in today's turbulent times and succeed in the future. I hope you can take these thoughts, tips, and lessons and truly learn from them. If I've even been a slight bit helpful in your journey to lifelong learning, I'll consider it a success. And I'd love to hear from you. If you want to drop me a line, tell me about what you've learned in your leadership journey, maybe where you are right now, maybe even if you need my help. My inbox is open to you. It's timeless@scottmonty.com. Stay with me for the next season of Timeless Leadership. I'm going to look forward to welcoming you back. Until then, remember that when you help others to dream more, learn more, do more, and become more, you are a leader. I'm Scott Monty. There's so much to learn.